Hello, my name is Maureen Harton Beebe, and I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker Realty in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. And I just put this presentation together to give you a feel as to the home buying process. Hopefully, you will find it helpful to give you a nice overview as to the various steps that you will encounter. And I congratulate you for being able to think about a home purchase, whether you're a first-time home buyer or you're looking to make a move from your current home. I also, in this presentation, I have included a slide and a video actually about myself just to give you more of an idea as to who I am and what I am all about. Feel free to give me a call or, contact me in whatever way you find easiest. Looking forward to speaking with you, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. Okay, some pointers that hopefully you can, put into place throughout the transaction, even prior to finding a home and conducting your home search. First off, I can't stress the importance enough of good communication, and that includes with your agent, but certainly with anyone else within your transaction party. Any kind of concerns that you may have regarding the property, any types of requests regarding the property or the contract, be sure to have that or voice that with your agent. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to have those side conversations with the seller, because even if they are well intended, it can really open up a Pandora's box and it can actually become a liability in the long run. Keep in mind that your agent and other members of your team are professionals, and they can help guide you in the direction that makes the most sense. Be sure, as I mentioned previously, when you're actually out doing the house hunting and going to various showings, that your conversations truly are related to just questions regarding the property only, versus any information that could potentially help a competing consumer or the listing agent. Timeliness for showings is important as well. If you have an appointment at 2 o'clock, I would suggest getting there before 2 o'clock, just to make sure you don't have any snafus with traffic or anything of that nature. Your showing appointment may be limited to anywhere between 15 minutes and 30 minutes. So have that awareness as well. You want to be able to spend some time in the property in order to make a more informed decision. Think about what your deal breakers are, in terms of, both home amenities, but also in terms of inspection findings. So, that is worth doing some pre-thinking and, kind of saying to yourself, well, gee, a repair that costs up to this much in terms of dollar amount, I think we can handle that, but something over this dollar amount, we're probably going to have to negotiate that. I think anytime you can do some kind of thoughtful thinking before an actual step happens, it's going to help that step be more efficient. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The other thing I would certainly suggest, and I've already suggested, is a strategy of keeping up with your timelines and your deadline dates. Again, whether it's using a calendar or a to-do list, whatever is actually easiest for you and most effective for you. Very important, keep consistent with your spending. Please realize that, just because you have been approved for a loan, it doesn't mean that the lender is not going to be looking at things just prior to closing. In fact, what they will do is they will conduct, a recheck in terms of employment and in terms of credit, just to be sure that you have been consistent. So you want to avoid any additional credit cards. You want to avoid any purchases that are not part of your normal spending patterns, okay? Because you can actually jeopardize the ability to close if you're doing those types of things. Avoiding a laundry list of repairs post-inspection. So really use that negotiation period to negotiate what makes sense versus every single line item. You want to be able to get to closing. That is really your ultimate goal. So keep that in mind during that negotiation period. Any kind of changes in your financial profile, if you've had a change at work, for example, where you're working reduced hours, even though you think that that's a minimal change, you need to report that in that particular scenario to your loan officer. But certainly you can report that to your agent as well. You are much better off being very transparent with what is happening rather than saying, oh, that's no big deal, it shouldn't affect anything. Your loan officer will be able to tell you if that affects anything. So please be transparent with any nuances, no matter how large or particularly no matter how small, because it's much better to get those types of things on the table and resolved if they can be resolved. Step number 1 is pre-approval. Absolutely, if I get a phone call from somebody looking to buy, it's the first question, and the reason why it's so important is because this is something you need to have to even submit your offer. So that's vital. You also need to know what would be a reasonable offer price, and the pre-approval would give you that information. But very important, you want to make sure you overlay what's important and what is comfortable to you. So what that means is, if you are pre-approved for a $325,000 house, but when you sit down and you calculate what the mortgage payments would be, and it's kind of far above your comfort level, it's perfectly okay to work at a number lower than that. And so what I say to folks is, yes, get your pre-approval, make sure it's in writing, but really talk to your loan officer or even grab a financial calculator and start roughly figuring out what the payments would look like. Okay, so the very first step. Okay, so now we're going to talk about goals. And why are goals important? Goals are important because they will help keep you focused and they will help you to stay objective. So my big suggestion would be to really think about what your goals for a home purchase are before you start the home search. It will help you to target in on homes that meet your criteria. And it will also help you when you're in the midst of showings to step back and say, gee, does this home really meet my goals? You can periodically revisit your goals at any time. They can shift, they can modify, but you always want to have those goals in mind. So what are some examples of goals? Well, we talked a little bit about pre-approval and about where you feel comfortable for your mortgage and your mortgage payments. So think about what your goal is in terms of your comfort level and the range of the mortgage amount. That's an important goal. In addition to that, timing may be really important to you. So for example, if your lease is expiring in 3 to 6 months, then your goal may be dominated by finding a home and closing on it within that time. And that may mean that some amenities may be deemed less important than if timing was not essential. Location is probably important to you as well. So you're going to want to be in a city, town, neighborhood that meets your needs and meets your lifestyle. Okay. In addition to that, features or amenities are also a big consideration. So that means, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, or anything else that you feel is important. Good idea to break that down into 3 categories. So think about what your must-haves are, what your must-not-haves are, and also what you would like to have, but maybe it's not essential, particularly if all the other goals are being met. Okay? In addition to that, and I would say it may be one of the most important pieces of this goal setting process, is really think about how long you want to spend in the home. Is it a 5-year home? Or is this a home where you would like to have some potential to stay there 15, 20, or even 30 years? And the reason why that's important is because it may impact your decisions for all those other items I just mentioned, which can be amenities, location, or even how much you plan to pay for the home. Okay, so for example, if a 2-bedroom house would work just fine for you now, but you want to have the potential of being there 15 years, and if you do that, you're going to need a 3rd bedroom, then maybe you should be looking at 3-bedroom homes and modify that goal. All right, so think about your goals, and as I said, you can periodically go back and modify them, but it's really going to help you stay objective, and it's going to help you look at the homes that make sense for you to actually look at. Oftentimes a consumer may ask, gee, do I even need a realtor to assist me with this transaction? Is it something I can do alone? And yes, it is something you can do alone, but having a professional by your side is really a good idea. There is so much value in having a realtor work with you. So some of the reasons why I say that. A realtor is going to have access to tools and technology that the average consumer will not have. A realtor will also know other agents and have some connections. And in the case of an agent that works within a large brokerage, such as myself, that may mean that you have offices across the state that you can tap into. And typically, a consumer will not have that same accessibility. A realtor also knows the process from A to Z. They're going to help you out with each step of the process. They should be educating you in advance so that you know what to expect. They're going to help you with the terminology of the contracts, and they're also going to help you with timelines. And there are many timelines that need to be followed in order to get to that finish line. A realtor knows the market. We live, sleep, and breathe this market. So we're going to know about pricing, and we can analyze. We're going to look at comparable properties. There are many formulas that we can tap into to use in order to figure out, what would an appropriate offer price be. We will also be there to help you negotiate even during the transaction itself. After the inspection, if repairs are required, we know how to do that, and we have the tools to be able to do that well. We're going to advocate, we will represent, and we will negotiate for you. So I guess the bigger question is not so much whether or not you need a realtor, but maybe the bigger question really is in the selection process, to just make sure that the agent you do choose is someone who fits your value system and someone who fits or exceeds your expectations. So now you have your pre-approval, you know how much you can afford, or you have thought about how much you can afford, and the home search begins. And this is when it's important to kind of think back about your goals. So just because your pre-approval is to a certain amount, again, that does not mean that that actually needs to be the upper limit of what you decide you can afford. So that's an important thing. And then also, if you think back to the goals, you thought about your amenities, you thought about how long you would like to be in this particular home. And so all of those things should factor into the home search. So what you're going to want to do is make sure you have a conversation with your realtor, and all that information is provided, and you just have a really good exchange so that he or she feels very comfortable with what you're looking for. And then what should also happen is that those criteria will be entered into the multiple listing services. You can be set up on an auto email system, so as soon as a home that fits your criteria crops up, you will be notified of that. Really important, and I can't stress it enough, but in a seller's market, you want to make sure that you are really keeping on top of those communications and talking with your agent about which properties appeal to you, because in a seller's market, they will go very quickly. In more of a buyer's market or a balanced market, you might have a little bit more time to play with. Okay, in addition to the MLS, you can certainly continue your search on the web. There's no issue with that. Please keep in mind that some of those searches will return properties that have already been sold or are in pending status. Okay, so that's just something to remember. Um, Also, if you recall, your realtor will likely have connections with other agents, and that should help in your search. And in addition to that, oftentimes realtors have, little tricks up their sleeves to kind of have a way to look at off-market properties. And so these are properties that are not currently for sale, and so the competition is not quite as stiff for that type of property, and there are ways to look at that, maybe more so if you're not having a whole lot of success in the traditional methods. Okay, so now you have seen a property or maybe a couple of properties that you feel you're interested in. And so what I would always suggest is that you do a little bit of previewing homework just to make sure that it's truly a property you are interested in. And I would encourage you to take advantage of tools such as Google Maps so that you can get a feel for what the street looks like and maybe even some of the neighboring streets. In addition to that, I would look at any virtual tours available online, and I would strongly encourage you to do a drive-by of the property, not just that particular street, but some of the neighboring streets, to make sure that it's an area that you really feel suits your lifestyle. If you do have the ability and if time is on your side to do more than one drive-by, I would encourage you to do that as well. And I would encourage you to do that at different times of the day so you can get a true sense as to the flavor of the neighborhood and the activity. Now you've decided, yes, I'm absolutely interested in this property, and if you haven't already communicated with the agent, then you should do it at this point. And so what will happen next is the agent will take a closer look at the listing and will check to see whether or not there are set days and times for showings, or whether or not the appointments can be made, in a flexible type of situation, and your agent will coordinate that viewing for you. So be sure to talk with the agent, your particular agent, versus the actual listing agent. Once you are at the property, I would strongly suggest that any conversation that happens is only related to the property itself in terms of, amenities and just questions about the actual property. And so the reason why I say that is that if you're getting into conversations and it leads to things such as pricing and, well, what do you think? Or I think we could go this high. And there's another consumer there who is also interested in the property. They're going to take that information and they're going to use it possibly to help them in their own decision making. If the listing agent is there, you want to remember that that listing agent is there to support their seller. So again, any information you provide can be really helpful to the seller. And so that's not necessarily what you want to have happen. So in fact, I would actually suggest that conversations with your agent happen outside of the actual viewing. And part of that conversation, or I should say a big part of that conversation, should be, considerations about the property itself. So what are the positives? What are the potential risks, if there are any? And then you're going to have that kind of follow-up conversation, potentially on the spot, or maybe when you get home and you kind of look at everything and consider everything as to whether or not this is a home that you are going to rule out and you just want to continue your search, or perhaps you'd like to place an offer. And as a really quick side note, you will see a comment on the slide about COVID precautions. So whether or not COVID is an issue in your community, and even if restrictions have been lifted, it is truly up to the seller in terms of whether or not precautions should be followed. So that's something your agent should know about and can inform you before stepping into the property. Our next topic of conversation is due diligence. And what is due diligence? That is essentially the act of researching the property. And it's important for the buyer to take on some responsibility. And, honestly, I think the biggest bullet point here is to ask questions. So when you are rereading the listing prior to going to the showing or considering a showing, really see if there's anything there that you don't quite understand, and that's an opportunity to ask questions. This is a huge list, and it's not an all-inclusive list. Each property comes with its own set of question marks in many regards. So the takeaway here is to ask questions. Just to briefly categorize some of these things on the list, I have flood insurance, taxes, and HOA fees. All three of those items are going to contribute to potentially a higher mortgage payment or a higher monthly bill. So very important, when you think about flood insurance, that's a property that if flood insurance is required, it is a risk, but it is also a financial consideration because it can be fairly costly, to the point that a loan may actually be a bit harder to secure for the price point you're thinking about. Taxes, again, each city has its own tax rate. It's an important question if you have your taxes rolled into your mortgage, or even if you do not have your taxes rolled in, it's a monthly expense that you'll be contending with, or a quarterly expense if you pay them outside of the mortgage. HOA fees, those are homeowner association fees. So things like a condominium as a property and other communities maybe that are on leased land, for example, are going to have a monthly fee. And the purpose of that monthly fee is really maintenance. So that is a big question, and it's something you're probably going to see stated outright on the listing. The other line items, zoning, permits, on-site water treatment center, which typically refers to a septic system, restrictions, easements, and whether or not it's near water or wetlands. Those are all property-related questions, and some of them may not be quite as crucial as others. So, for example, zoning may be really important to look at if you're looking at a land purchase. It will also be really important if you're thinking about, opening a business. You need to find out whether or not it is zoned for that. There are many other facets to zoning. So if it is a property that you are thinking of doing something special with, or it appears that it may be in a district that does or does not allow certain things to happen, then that's going to be maybe even a more important question on your list. Permits, that is something that is on the sales disclosure form, and it's something important to look at because ideally you would like any past work or repairs to be something that was permitted work. On-site water treatment center actually refers to a septic system in most cases. If there is a cesspool on the property, in the state of Rhode Island, you actually have to either have that cesspool dealt with by having a septic installed or connecting to sewer if it's available, and both of those are costly ventures. Okay, so that's about as far as I'm going to go with this one. There is a lot of detail, and again, I have to say the takeaway is to be sure to ask those questions. Okay, now you have found the house that you really would like to place an offer on. So what are the important things that need to be considered? Number one, you want to spend a little bit of time, thoughtful time in terms of what should this offer look like. And this is really where an agent is invaluable in the process, because they are going to look at comparable properties within at least a mile or less radius, and also within 6 or fewer months. So that's an important thing. Your offer, you always want to be sure it's within market value, regardless of whether it's a seller's market, a buyer's market, or a balanced market. You are a lot safer and a lot closer to offer acceptance if it's within market value. Currently, in a seller's market, chances are you're going to go at list or above list, and that is where the agent can really give you a feel for what recent sold properties look like, and certainly give you a feel for those that essentially won the offer, how far did they go above list. So that is a conversation that is worth spending some time on. Another kind of key piece to keep in mind is that regardless of what type of market you are in, that have your offer really kind of be your highest and your best. And the reason why I say that is because if you have, for example, a competitor that puts in an offer in terms of sale price and other terms that you could have done, but you decided to be a little more conservative, that tends to be a heartbreaker. So think about it in those terms. What is your walkaway number, and what would you feel comfortable with? An offer can be accepted, it can be rejected, or it can be counter-offered. Keep in mind that if your offer is rejected, then your offer becomes null and void. All right, so that's an important piece. The other kind of tip that I have for you is oftentimes, I know I do this, I use the purchase and sales contract as the offer document. And it makes a whole lot of sense to do that. But if you have the opportunity to review the purchase and sales contract with your agent prior to even making your first offer, it's going to give you a much better feel for what should be included in that offer, and it will also give you, a window into what the transaction will look like. That purchase and sales contract is really the transaction mapped out from beginning to end. So it's good to kind of have that insight prior to really getting into the transaction. Also, another really vital piece is that offer is not accepted. It does not become a contract until every party has signed it and it has been delivered. So if it appears that your offer has been accepted, be sure that you sign and date it ASAP, and that the agent gets it over to the seller side as quickly as possible, because Murphy's Law, if you have not signed and dated it and another offer comes in and it's higher than yours, you could potentially lose that home, and that can be a really big heartbreaker. So keep that in mind. Now your offer is accepted, so there is time for a little bit of celebration, but not too much celebration. There's lots of timelines and lots of things to do between this acceptance to the closing table. So definitely keep that in mind. What you want to remember is that contract, the purchase and sales contract, that is really your roadmap to what will be happening during the transaction. So those details that were agreed upon at time of offer are now in the contract. You will be submitting an additional deposit referred to as an earnest money deposit during this period of time. In addition to that, you've already placed a deposit when you submitted the offer. So both of those deposits will be in escrow, and they will end up, once you get to closing, that can be part of your down payment. Okay, so it's not in addition to. The earnest money deposit is important from the seller perspective because it is a protection. So what that means is if for some reason there is a breach of contract, and you walk away, which I am sure that that will not happen, but if it were to happen, or if the contract fell apart for reasons outside of what is allowable, then that earnest money is now potentially going to the seller. So some really important things, especially in regard to timelines. You will have an inspection contingency as part of the contract, and what that is it gives you 10 days to have all inspections related to the property conducted, and it also includes negotiation with the seller side in terms of whether or not there is anything that you think needs to be repaired before you can proceed with the contract or with the property. This is vitally important, and what I tell all of my buyers is it's something you want to get on as soon as that contract is signed and it is official. So you're going to work to get that scheduled as close to day one of the allowable 10-day period. Keep in mind that some inspections, some testing is going to take more than one day. So for example, if you choose to have radon testing, it's going to take more than one day to get those results in. Well, that still needs to occur within that 10-day period. So timing is crucial. As part of that 10-day process, it also includes negotiation. So this is, a matter of getting results back from your inspections and then deciding what you can live with and what you may need some assistance with. A real piece of advice is I would pick and choose what really is important. So trying to avoid a laundry list of repairs is important because you really do want that property to move towards closing. So compromise is probably part of the gain there. And in addition to that, just keep in mind that any home inspector is going to try to find anything and everything that is a potential issue. So, don't be intimidated by a list of items. That truly is the home inspector's job. In addition to that, you can, if you're dissatisfied with the negotiation process, as much as, you hate to do this, but it is possible to end the contract at that point if you cannot come to terms between the parties, between the buyer and between the seller. In addition to the inspection contingency, you have the mortgage contingency. And again, that is very timeline based. So your agent will help to, put a timeline on the contract, and typically there's a conversation with the lender, but part of that timeline is to identify a date when you have a commitment from your lender that yes, indeed, they will approve the loan. And sometimes that's based on conditions, but what we really are looking for is a commitment. So same as the inspection, where you're going to call hopefully on day one, you are also going to be getting in touch with your loan officer to submit the official loan application. Remember that you just have the pre-approval, but you don't actually have the loan application. So that's something that you want to get on right away because it is time sensitive. And also both yourself as the buyer and the property need to be approved for that loan. Timelines are crucially important. So make sure at the beginning of the contract, once you know you have a contract, you are entering whatever makes sense for you to enter, whether it's using a calendar app or a to-do list or something of that nature, where you're keeping right on top of those timelines, because you'll have a number of things kind of coming together at one time. As I alluded to, there is so much that happens between the time the offer is accepted and the contract becomes official to the point where you're sitting down at the closing table. So if you look at this slide, you'll notice a lot of overlapping between those functions, and it's really hard to say that things happen in a particular order, because truly it does not. And I will try to go through this and just really give you the key points, but the reality is every transaction is different and unique in whatever aspect, whether it's related to the property or related to the contract itself. So that's something to keep in mind. We already talked about the importance of the mortgage application and making sure that you're getting in contact with your loan officer, preferably on day one, because there is a timeline attached where the seller is going to want to see that, yes, indeed, you have been approved for a loan. So that's really crucial. Also realize that it's not uncommon to have additional requests, typically documents, so that when your loan goes to underwriting, they may ask to see particular documents. And so you want to really be sure that you're paying attention to your email and that you're getting whatever documents, whether it's at the beginning of the process or towards the tail end of the process. Be sure that you get them submitted properly and really just as directed. Okay, and then we did speak about and touch upon the inspection process. One thing to consider, especially if it's a home that has some age to it, you can think about whether or not a home warranty may make sense for you. And that's something worth speaking to your agent about. Like I said, particularly if it is an aging property, and it may help give you some nice peace of mind, especially that first year of home ownership, if there are any repairs that crop up and need attending to. Again, be sure that you schedule it as soon as possible. Recognize that your home inspector may see a need for additional inspections, even some that you maybe were not prepared for. So again, that's another good reason to get that going early. And also keep in mind that you have 10 days for all the inspections and for your negotiation. So again, timeliness and timing and just being quick to do it is an important thing. Appraisal. So appraisal is really important from a lender perspective. And if you remember when we were talking about submitting offers, I really kind of hit home with making sure that your offer is within market value. So this is a very important reason why. Now, the reason why an appraisal is done on the property is to make sure that the sale price is at market value. So the lender really needs to protect itself and, needs to make sure that any loan that is provided, it's provided because the property itself warrants that sale price. So what we really want to make sure of, or hope for, I guess we could say, is that the value, the appraisal returns a value that at least matches the sale price, or maybe is even a bit higher. Okay, and if that does not happen, then it does not mean that the deal is over, but it does mean that you and the agents and the team, kind of needs to pull together and figure out what the next step is. And that might mean that the buyer has the funds to pay the difference. It might mean that you're meeting in the middle with the seller, or maybe the seller is willing to reduce the purchase price. So it could mean a whole host of things. It doesn't mean it has to end. It just means that hopefully you can come to an agreement there. Homeowners insurance, I like to bring this up because it's an easily forgotten thing. It is required to purchase homeowners insurance, and it is actually required to close on the home. So you need to make sure that that is done and that it is prepaid for the first year's premium. In addition to that, the other thing that is the responsibility of the buyer is to secure a closing attorney. My best advice there would be to check with your loan officer, because they have closing attorneys that they frequently work with. And that's an important consideration, because if they're already used to working with each other, then things may happen a bit more quickly. So I would check with your loan officer. The closing attorney is really the maestro of the closing. They really help to pull everything together. They're going to be involved in the title search aspect to make sure that there are no issues with ownership, there are no issues with loans or liens on the property or any kind of claim against the property. You want to be sure that you have a clear title in order to close on your new home. They will deal with the documents and help finalize the settlement statement, and they are going to be helpful in getting that deed listing you as the new owner to where it really needs to be. So that, again, is something that you're going to want to get on fairly quickly in the process so that closing attorney can be involved when and where he or she needs to be. So this is exciting. You are now cleared to close. So what can you expect during those final couple of days? Well, first off, you're going to do a walkthrough of the property to make sure that the home appears to be in the same condition as it was at the time of the offer. The property should be broom swept clean, so none of the belongings that you are, not expecting to see from the prior owner, they should not be in the home. Any repairs that have been negotiated, look for that and make sure that they have actually been done. You are also going to be sure to call to make sure that utilities are now in your name. The owner should have made their phone call already, so now it's time to transfer those utilities to you so that when you come in and you turn on the lights, you will actually have lights in your home. So things like electrical, gas, cable, those may be utilities that you're going to be looking at. The closing typically happens at the closing attorney's office. Be sure to bring a photo ID. Make sure you know what the dollar amount is and have a certified check in hand. I would also suggest bringing a tick list. So if there was anything maybe that was negotiated post-inspection or otherwise that you think could be easily forgotten, be sure that it is addressed at the closing table. And if not, you will remember to kind of bring that up. The most important thing is to make sure that you're walking away with the keys in hand and do something special for yourself to enjoy it, because you have been through quite a bit and now it's time to really celebrate. Hi everyone, my name is Maureen Beebe and I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker Realty out of East Greenwich. I just wanted to take a really quick second to introduce myself. My special areas of interest, I would say, is working with first-time home buyers. Just so exciting to look at the prospect of getting your first home. And I love the educational piece to that. In addition to that, military families have a soft spot in my heart. My daughter actually came home from the Army on February 1st. So I absolutely enjoy, the prospect of working with those folks to help them potentially relocate or otherwise. Coldwell Banker also has a program for military families. And if you're eligible, you are able to receive cash back after closing, which is just a really nice plus, especially after buying a home. In addition to that, I do have my seniors real estate specialist designation. I was actually in healthcare for 33 years. The last 28 was in a leadership role. I have a lot of experience working with our older adults. So, tagging on this designation, this specialty is, again, just really near and dear to my heart. It's something I've done, honestly, since I was 17 years old. I've worked with our senior citizens. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, if you'd like to chat, whatever the case might be, The easiest bet is probably to message me through my Facebook page, but you can certainly call or text me as well. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much.